All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome here. We are gonna wait for the others to join us. So those who are incoming, hello, everyone. Welcome here in today's webinar. We are going to just wait for everybody to jump in because today we saw that there are plus minus approximately 140 people registered for today's webinar and today's topic. What type of topic it is, you're gonna know in a few minutes. As always, we are gonna wait for everyone. So grab the coffee, tea, maybe shot of tequila. I don't know. I don't know if it is so soon. So make yourself comfy and let's see what is gonna happen. I can see people coming in. So as always, you know the drill. Your mics are not on, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would love to hear from you. Hello, hi. Where are you coming from? What's the time in your country? Oh, maybe the weather. So let's see. What is the time? We have 1 more minute to go. I mean to wait, and then we are gonna start the entire webinar. Hello, hello, hello. Those who just jumped in to the lobby. Okay. Let's see. I can see still people coming in. So let's see. All right. Okay, people still are jumping in. And it's 3 p.m. Central European time, and that's the perfect time to start our webinar. So let me welcome you here once again. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar with the topic Dashboard 2.0. We are going to talk about the dashboard, the advanced, settings, etc. So let me really quickly introduce myself. My name is Easy8, and I'm going to be your main host throughout the entire webinar. And we would need to talk about the technical stuff first of all. Everybody knows that your mics are not on. Unfortunately, all attendees have been muted, and it is gonna stay that way. So, talking about the Q&A, we are going to answer all your questions. You can leave the questions in the Q&A section. Unfortunately, your chat is also muted, but if you would like to ask us any kind of questions during the presentation or after the presentation, you can do so in the Q&A section as always. The entire webinar is recorded, so if you're gonna miss something, don't worry, you're gonna receive the recordings in few days into your mailboxes, so you're not gonna miss anything. So, as I told you today, today's topic is Dashboards 2.0, and let me introduce you our main speaker for today's topic. I would like to welcome here our main speaker, Peter, who is going to present the topic. Hello, Peter.
Hello.
All right. So, well, Peter is going to have a presentation, which is going to take approximately 45 minutes. After the presentation, we are having some time for your Q&A, for the Q&A. So we are going to answer all your questions at the end of the presentation together with Peter. So, and I'm not gonna talk here that much, and I'm going to pass the floor now to Peter, who has a really interesting information for you. So enjoy, have fun. Peter, it's all yours.
Thank you, Easy. And then hello, everybody. So what you can expect in the upcoming 30 to 40 minutes. So those will be mostly experiences from, let's say, hundreds of our customers who are using the dashboards within the Easy8 mine. And I have selected the most common use cases from their daily practice. So it won't be too much technical. So we will not go into the detail of every single, let's say, setting of the dashboard, but we will be mostly discussing about the concrete use cases which are on behind. And this webinar is called like 2.0, which means that it's a following one from the previous, which was purely concentrated on the, let's say, technical stuff. And on the other hand, we are still requiring some prerequisites, which means like at least the basic knowledge of the like a dashboards itself, how to configure it within the application to have, let's say, overview. And then the main part would be about the practical examples. So it is divided into like a 3 parts, like how to visualize the data for the users, how to visualize it for the, let's say, managers, and then most likely also for the customers, because to be honest, this is, we are still forgetting about the customer, which is like a top, like notch part, and the dream of every single PM, like to involve the customer inside the project and to, let's say, avoid the unnecessary ping pong over the email. So I will show you some tips and tricks like how to contribute within the customer, even within the PM application. And then, as Citi said, there will be place for the, let's say, your questions at the end and hopefully our answers. And then, let's say, absolutely at the end, there will be like a questionnaire, including, let's say, your satisfaction. All right, so let's jump into the prerequisites. So we are expecting that you will have at least basic overview about like a certain, let's call it like a terms. One of those is like easy pages, which means that you have knowledge about the homepage. You know what does it mean like to configure the homepage. You know what does it mean to configure the project overview page. That here on the right side there is a reference screen, which is of course visualizing like a configuration of the widgets. So you should be aware about it, that it exists. And then there are certain formats how to visualize the data. So you also should be aware that there is a format of the list, there is a format of the trend, graph, pivot table. So like a certain formats, how we can visualize the data. And then of course, like to synchronize on the level of the language. So then I will be using some keywords, which is called like entities. So the meaning behind is the projects, tasks, users, let's say attenders. So those are like entities which are used in the system. So let's jump into the practical examples. So firstly, a small theory at the beginning. So firstly, I will start with a, let's say, user view. So as far as you know, like the main responsibility of every single user within the, let's say, project management lifecycle is to be working on the tasks. And in that case, it should be super simple. Just the concentration on the task itself and the certain attributes like the description, priority, due date, like a deadline for the task, and that should be super easily visualized. So I will show you some tips like how the majority of our clients are using it. And then like a second point is for the measurement of the efficiency. So if you are not so far there yet, it doesn't matter, but just a small hint from the practice. So basically the mostly companies are measuring the efficiency through the logging of the time. So there are, again, certain techniques how to do that. So for example, mostly in IT and engineering companies, they are using something which is called timesheets. So this is like a visualization, which is mostly concentrating on the, let's say, weekly view, because on the monthly view doesn't make so much sense because you don't know what you have done basically the last week, neither the let's say next month. So it's super easy, like just to concentrate to fulfill the weekly demand. So I will show you how to do that within the application, within the, let's say, homepage, like embedded option. And then another, let's say, industry would be, for example, services. And these guys are mostly visual and they are the fans of the calendar. So another option how to report the time is to be using, let's say, the calendar view. So this would be another, let's say, page where I will show you how to easily within the calendar report the hours. and mostly on the monthly basis, because these guys are not so much strict as from the IT or software-based companies. So for them, it's usually enough like to fulfill the monthly font, which is for example, 160 hours. And then if it's there, so it's enough. So I will show you some techniques. And then the last group will be for the contractors. So let's imagine that these guys, the externists who are working on your projects, so for them is the most crucial to have a clear evidence about everyday clear evidence what they have reported on the project in order to fulfill the invoice at the end of the month, right? So they are concentrating on another view. So here we can see like there are different principles per different roles and different industries. And then I will show you like how the customers from these industries are showing the dashboarding. And then of course, there is another, let's say, psychological aspect, like how to bring them the, let's say, own controlling. Because of course you can still push on the employees like, hey, please do it, but they don't want to do that, right? So there is a one technique like to visualize, for example, the KPI, like the indicator, the goal, let's say the goal for the specific like a position. And in that case, once they will see it on the homepage, so they will be, let's say, natively trying to reach it. So that's, let's say, one psychological tip. So what does it mean? What does it mean in the practice, in the application? So if I will switch to the user view, so here is basically one example. So this is like a pre-configured page, which is not containing any unnecessary links. So here you can see on the, let's say, left bar, there is, or left menu, there is nothing else than just like the home page. There are no certain buttons on the, let's say, blue bar on the top. So it's super simple. It's just containing like the list of the tasks and then some widgets on the top. And then as far as I was talking about, let's say, this psychological aspect in order to visualize the goal. So for example, in this company, the goal would be like a completion percentage ratio. So these guys are doing, let's say, the tickets. So they would like to complete as much as possible of the tickets in a dedicated time. And what does it mean? So you can define like a completion percentage ratio. So my tip would be, for example, to specify it as like a static value. So how to do that? You can go to the profile or of every single person, and within the profile you can define like it as a static value. So average percentage completion ratio would be like a 65%. You can of course specify another KPI, another attribute, which would be, for example, billable utilization. But this is something which is mostly related to the like IT or software-based companies. But in this case, we will set like 65% is a completion ratio. So you can use this component, which is trend. So the format of the visualization is the trend. And then, not sure if you know it, but you can also visualize just the static value. So now I will show it like this average percentage complete ratio from the user, which is this one, right? So you can even visualize it user per user, role per role, position per position. And in that case, one tip. So if you will be playing around with these trends, so please try to avoid, let's say, aggressive options. Here you can see like it's a green. So your goal, or let's say the goal of the management, is to bring to the users something like not aggressive. So the green means like, hey, this is your kind goal. And in that case, to emphasize it, I'm even using the symbol of the heart, which is of course like not aggressive, like an exclamation mark, like, hey, please do it. So this is your goal, otherwise you won't get paid. So this is like a different method. So please don't forget about it, like to avoid any, let's say, aggressive pushy method, but let's rather visualize it as a kind goal. And in that case, if you are, let's say, visualizing the goal, so then we should have like a concrete numbers in order to compare it. So here is like an actual percentage completion, and this is automatically, of course, counting from the list of the closure tasks. So I'm again using the component, which is I'm using the format, which is trend. Entity is tasks, and if I will scroll down, so I have configured it in a manner like to visualize the tasks which are assigned to me. And then the first variable is like a closed tasks. And then I will divide it by, let's say, total amount of the tasks assigned to me, right? So the closed tasks versus total amount of the tasks, and it will show the data in a percentage, right? So in that case, I will see the clear comparison, like a 65 is a goal, 30 is let's say my current load, And then it works dynamically. So here in the list of the tasks, if I will, for example, update the sum of those, let's not this one, but for example, this one, let's put it to the done, refresh the page. And from the 30%, I'm already, let's say, up to 39, right? So it's increasing. So automatically the guys could see like the trend. And again, like psychologically, they will try to reach it. They will try to reach the KPI, and that's the point. And then, of course, like the good trend or good visualization technique is to always show the detail on the, let's say, below the charts. So on the top is chart, the detail is below. So here I'm visualizing the list of the tasks, super simple. Very, very common is the classic list. Of course, you can visualize it in the Kanban board, but the list is usually enough. And then with a certain attributes like a status, priority, due date. Of course, due date would be great, like to visualize it that, let's say, the soonest one is on the top logically. And so I'm pretty sure you know it, but there is a chance like to sort it based on the due date and how it should be sorted out, right? So this is like regarding to the tasks. And in the presentation, I was also, let's say, demonstrating how to measure the efficiency, which would be like a spend time. And here is another, let's say, KPI, which would be in the, for example, IT and engineering company, the billability, because of course the management is focusing on the where you have spent the time. If it was like a activity belongs to the customer projects, which is paid, or let's say non-paid activities. So billability is a great indicator. Again, green one, hard, so not aggressive approach. And then you can, of course, compare it with actual billable utilization, which is, again, like a trend. And it shows you like it's super simple. So I'm just going to show like a user is me, billability is yes. So on the one hand would be just the billable hours versus all of the hours, right? Again, show in the percentage. So then I can clearly see like, hey, I'm, let's say, closer to the target or not. Of course, as you know, like you can always click on it to get into the detail, right? And here we are getting into one tip. So as said, like the IT guys, they really love something which is called timesheets. And there is a certain limitation within the Easy8 mind, so you don't have a chance to easily visualize the timesheets on the home page. Of course, you can click on it somewhere in the application, but in order to keep it super simple, so ideally you would like to place it in the home page. And how to do that, there is a certain trick. So you can use the, let's say, options, which is called like an embedded iframe, right? So you can create the iframe and then you can put there the certain link from the application. In my case, it is like a timesheets. And then, of course, you can put there some resolution, and it is embedding the timesheet inside the page, right? So for me as a developer, I don't need to go anywhere else. I just log into the system, I see my utilization, and then I have a chance to simply just select the project where I belongs to, the concrete task where I'm working with, and then I can put the amount of the hours what I'm doing. It's super simple, right? Not big deal. And here is, of course, like a summary of the hours. So, but as said, like the developers, they really like it, they know it. And then there is another tip, like you can copy the rows from this, let's say, predefined week. So again, like your developers will save some seconds, so they no need to create again and again the timesheet. But as you know, like they're usually working for the certain weeks or months on one project. So they will just copy the data from the previous week to another week, right? And they are continuing. So again, they will save some milliseconds. So this is most likely the dashboard or the page as a tip for the, let's say, IT software-based companies. For the services, as I have said, like these guys mostly are visual, so there are no such strict in a measuring of the data. So my tip would be enough to, for example, use the calendar. So I have just placed physically here the very big calendar view on the monthly basis, because the month view is enough for these guys, because the management is usually not measuring it per week, but mostly per month it's enough. They just would like to be sure what these guys are doing, if it's like enough work. And then, of course, here on the top, there is a widget just accumulating the hours from the calendar, right? What these guys have done. And then, of course, if there is a comment, so this is, of course, benefit. And then the calendar works super simple. So you can click on the concrete date, select the project, select the task, put there the amount of the hours, the activity and billability, and clicking save, right? So this is usually enough. As said, I'm trying to, let's say, brings like a not a super fancy setup of the, let's say, bunch of the combination of the dashboards and gadget. This is not useful. The useful is like to super limit it per concrete let's say industry or concrete roles, because otherwise it would be like really a lot of dashboards. So that's the reason why I'm demonstrating just only single piece of features. Another one would be, for example, the contractors. So as said before in the presentation, these guys are mostly concentrating on the, let's say, data for the invoice, right? So my preference and best what I have seen so far, these guys are monitoring it on the daily basis, like if they have fulfilled the amount of the hours, because of course, not every contractor is working like 8 hours a day, but usually like 4 hours or even less. And in that case, they are reporting the hours in order to have a clear evidence at the end of the month to generate the invoice, right? So here is a graph, like just to be sure that they didn't forget about any single day. And then plus, here is, for example, the detail, like to see that, for example, what I have done in the November, where I was participating on which tasks, and again, like the amount of the hours, even the comment if it's necessary. So this would be, let's say, the principles for the classic users, at least based on the observations what we have collected so far. And in that case, before we will jump into the project management section, so we have prepared like a short questionnaire. So Easy, if you would like to announce it.
Yeah, there is a one question which we would like to actually ask you, and we are really thrilled to know your answers. So I'm going to launch it right now, and the question is, what aspect of a project holds the highest priority for you? So you have three options: scope, time, and cost. So you should see the answers on your screens. Feel free to answer them, and we will see. It is technically information for us. We would like to know what is the highest priority for you. Okay, so time is winning at the moment. Still time. More than 50% of you are choosing a time. Okay, I'm going to wait a little bit more. Scope and time. Yeah, there is a huge fight between scope and time, but I think that time is gonna win these, I guess. All right. So I think that is it. I'm ending the pool, and those are the results. You should see your results on your screens. Time is the winner. Right after the time, we have a scope, and on the last spot, we have the cost. So thank you for your answers. And now I'm going to bring back the word to Peter, and he's gonna continue with his amazing presentation. Peter?
Thank you. And then also thanks for the, let's say, fulfillment of this questionnaire, because it brings us into another area, which is dedicated for the project managers. And we are usually forgetting, if we are talking about visualization, so we are forgetting about what is very important for our projects, which is usually based on the, for example, PM triangle. You probably know it from the Prince2 or PMI, where there is like a certain technique, like how to measure the project itself, right? The condition of the project from the perspective of the scope, cost, and then of course the finances, and then of course in order to deliver it in a certain quality, so these aspects should correlate. What does it mean in effect, and then in an easy red mind? So in order to bring you the data to do the right decision, because let's imagine from the reality, if you're receiving the new change requests within your scope, right? It doesn't mean necessarily like the budget will increase, because you could have, of course, the buffer within your, let's say, project budget, but of course it could affect the timeline. And then the question is like, do you have enough arguments against your customer that within the increase of the scope, it's also fine like to prolong the project? Is it okay or not? And this should be like the decisions where you should, let's say, consider. And then for these decisions, you will need the data. Of course, the, let's say, high level view. And then you can, for the certain situations, you can go into the detail. And this is exactly the approach of the Easy8 mind, like how to visualize this data from the perspective of the, let's say, cost, scope, and then the budgets/finances. And then we can't forget about, let's say, one element, which is usually that the project managers are mostly working on the multiple projects. So in that case, these guys, they are really acknowledged to do the multitasking. So usually they are covering 2 or 3 or 4 projects at once. And in that case, they should have a chance to quite easily switching the context and switching the view per these data across the multiple projects. So how to do that within the application? So we can simply switch to the PM view. And then I will start from the, let's say, timeline perspective. So I have created like a 4 tabs. The first tab is dedicated to the timeline. So what we have learned so far, it's mostly enough just to see. Here you can see that guy is working on the 3 projects, right? And then here is like a generic timeline, which is visualizing like a start date, end date of the project in the bar visualization. Then of course you have here the dark bar, or dark color, which is visualizing, let's say, the fulfillment of the project within the time. So for me, it's like an indicator. All right, I'm here, this red line, and then we are already fulfilling this part of the project of this bar. And then the milestones are visualizing usually the certain phases. In my case, I'm showing like a IT-based project delivery, so I'm using it for the releases. Of course, there could be like a phases of the project, right? And as said, like it could be a great indicator, because, for example, here in the eShop Miramax, so I'm here in the red line, but the fulfillment is already here. So we have just started, but the guys are so much in the progress, they are already there. So from my eyes, there is no issue so far, and we are even in a very positive situation. So this could be the indicators which could bring you the feeling where you are. And in order to go into the details, as we have said, like the technique is to visualize high level and then go to the detail. And on the bottom, I have placed in here the milestones. The milestones are basically these symbols, right? As said, it could be used for the phases. It could be used for the, let's say, certain delivery within the time. I'm using it for the releases. And this view, this milestone view, this is like a standard list, guys, by the way. The entity is a milestone, right? So I'm just visualizing the certain columns here. And for me, it's a beneficial from the perspective of, I see it, let's say, those are the projects. I see the concrete milestones, like I said, like a releases, I know the due date. And again, I see the fulfillment. So here is something like a visual indicator, again, for me on the first look to see where we are in which percentage of the fulfillment of the milestone. And I can even click on it just to see it in the detail. So I can click on it and I see that there are 3 tasks and 2 of those are closed, right? So, oh, pardon, 1 is closed. So, so this is a good technique. Of course, you can go to the detail of every single project and to open the Gantt chart there. But if we are talking about the timeline itself, so would be great like to use this technique. Of course, I'm recommending like to use, for example, baselines within the Gantt in order to snapshot it. But yeah, on the other hand, this would be probably enough, like a first indicator where you are, as said, like if you are behind the schedule or you are just right there. So this could be regarding to the timeline. As said, like this is like a minimal set, right? So my intention is to not overwhelm you with a bunch of another dashboards, which is usually for nothing, but just to see the timeline view. Regarding to the scope, so there are also certain techniques, but I will use some which is very popular, mostly in IT companies, where the scope is visualized from the perspective of the estimated hours, right? And then there is again like a technique where you can limit it per specific task within the system. What does it mean? If I will open this graph, which is visualizing, by the way, the estimates, right? So estimate versus spend time, but for me it's important estimate. So the blue bars are estimates per project. So web for Google is a project. Here is an estimate, custom solution for Siemens. This is another estimate. And then I'm just visualizing the estimates which are getting from the tracker, which is a type of the task, and it's called epic, right? So for me, epic, of course, you can call it differently, but from the Scrum methodology, the epic means requirement usually. So on that level, you can keep the estimates, right, as a, let's say, interpretation of the scope, and then you can even put there like a status, right? So if the requirement, which is epic, is approved, it means that customer has approved the scope of your let's say not the project, but let's imagine it as a requirement, right? So the customer has approved your requirement. What does it mean? So if you will sum it up as a collection of the requirements, so if your project is containing like a 20 requirements and the sum of these requirements is, let's say, accumulated in a certain number, so then this is the scope of your project. Of course, you can visualize it in the task on the task level, but usually this is of course the scope. And then how to see it also on the task level. So there is another tip. So on the bottom here, you can see something which is called like a custom Kanban board. So if you will click on the setup, so I can show it to you. So it's a custom Kanban board. And then I'm visualizing again, just only the epics, right? And what's the goal behind? Of course, here you can see like a certain columns, like a new and then status, review and the status. But for me, it would be important like approved by customer or client, right? What does it mean? What does it mean? If I will move on this task and put it to approved by customer and then refresh the page. So please concentrate from 290, it should be increased to 340. Right? So it's automatically increasing. What does it mean? I do have an argument that the customer has generated a new change request or new requirement, right? And then he has approved it. So he has approved the finances. Of course, it is visualized in the amount of the numbers, right? Amount of the estimated hours. So he has approved it. So this increase doesn't mean anything, let's say specifically, then just the increase of the like a scope of your project, but it was approved by the customer. So alibistically, you can say, all right, you have approved it. So I do have evidence you have done it. But we will be discussing about the involvement of the customer later on. But just a small tip that you can visualize this approval mechanism, and you are combining two win-win together. Right, so you can see the customer involvement here, the approval from his side, and then you see, let's say, the scope of your project. So this is like what we have observed so far, mostly in IT-based companies. And then we can slightly move on to the budget. Of course, budget could be calculated from different angles. Some of the companies are mostly concentrated on the hours. Some of the companies also in a real finances. In my case, I will be showing you like a certain monies, so like expenses and incomes. So you can imagine that these data are accumulated from somewhere. So if I will open every single project, so my recommendation is to be using the module which is called budget. And within that module, you can see like a plan versus reality. And these data are basically accumulated and visible in here in the trends. What does it mean? If I will open this trend, so there is entity real expense, and this expense is getting from that budget module, same as well as the income, right? So real incomes and getting or collecting this data from these modules, which are budgets. So my recommendation to use it. And then, of course, if you will be using the global filters, so you can filter across these projects like a customer for Siemens, Ashok Miramax, right? And you should be just switching and the data are, let's say, refreshed. So this is purely visible as far, I suppose you know it already, like how these trends are working. But another view, what I would recommend, this is like a financial, let's call it like a list view. If you will have a look into the details, so this entity is called Portfolio Overview, Project Budgets. So I really like it if we are talking about the real finances. In my case, those are the euros. And I have put in here, let's say, one more tip, guys, to you. Because if I'm a project manager and then I'm managing these 3 projects, I'm from time to time losing if it was sold out as a time and material or if it is fixed time, fixed price. So it's also good to, let's say, distinguish the projects based on the typization. So my tip for you guys, like you can even put there like the custom field, like a project type, and then it could be like time and material, fixed time, fixed price. And then you can even put there the budget. So please don't be worried if you don't have a module called budget. So you can even do a small trick. So you can put there like a static value in form of this custom field. So you can put there like this custom solution for Siemens was sold out for the 33 kilo euro. And then you can compare like the finances getting mostly from the estimate and spend time, right? Because of course, if you don't have a budget module, so you cannot calculate the concrete money, but you can calculate it from the spend time, and then you can even multiply it with a specific custom field to get the euro. But the most elegant solution is to use the budget model. So long story short, in order to visualize the budget, there are certain techniques. I would again recommend to put on the top like the trends. Then let's say global filters in order to be quickly able to search across the project. So as we have said, like usually the project managers, they have like multiple projects. And so you could be switching across those ones. And another technique or another tip, like you can even put there some typization, time and material, fixed time, fixed price, because usually it is really combined, and then the project manager should be aware about it. So those are the finances. And then the last part is dedicated to the risks. So this is, let's say, one part where we are usually forgetting about it, but this is very important one in order to secure the quality. Of course, you can visualize the quality from the perspective of, let's say, the effectiveness, estimation accuracy, and all of these KPIs. But usually the enough, at least based on the, for example, PMI or Prince2, is to visualize it per risks, right? So then you can avoid certain issues. So, and here is just the list of the risk. Here is just the visualization of the risk metrics. So I guess you also know it. So it's like a risk metric widget. So you can select for it. And once you will be generating the risks per concrete project, so then it will be fulfilled here as in a form of the, let's say, numbers, how many risks in a certain area, right? And for me, it's a really great indicator, because if I see, for example, extra effort for one epic for one requirement, which means that my scope will increase and potentially the finances. So then this is something what I should reconsider and open it either on the steering group committee with a customer or with my internal management. So that's regarding to the tips for the project managers. And now we are slightly getting to the last part, which would be dedicated to the customer. So as we have said, like, let's say originally there were some habits that, for example, the project manager is, let's say, sending to the customer the Gantt chart with a timeline and a project plan, including the scope of the project and all of these activities. But this is really over. This is like last century. Now we are in a very modern style, and then we are trying to involve the customer inside to the PM tool. Of course, with a limited rights, so we don't want to share everything to the customer, but some of the data would be very useful. And then how to do that, how to do these certain techniques. So of course, this timeline is, let's say, one of the visualization, which would be great for the customer to see where we are within the agreed timeline. And then let's say another one is, which is really the dream. This is really the dream, to involve the customer into the, let's say, acceptance or approval mechanism. So this is really great. Let's call it like alibistic approach, because once the customer will move on the task from to approval to approved, so then you have evidence that he has seen it, he is aware about it, and then he approved it, right? And then how to do that within the application. So we can jump into the last part, which is like the application configured for the view for the customer. So of course, usually the customer is able to see just one project. So this is, let's say, my case in here, where the customer is like a sponsor of the web for the Google. And then again, I'm showing him where we are. So this is the current date, let's say the reprocessing, and then the end of the project. And then of course the release is the same, usually the same style as for the project managers, but we can limit the access that he won't be able to go into the detail to the milestone, right? So that could be the case, like to avoid any unnecessary issues, to see some internal confident informations, right? So this could be just the view what the customer is able to see. And then let's say the last part would be like to go into the detail, and as said, like if something is assigned to the client, so then he can easily just by drag and drop approve the task. So this is, let's say, on me, I am a client, and if I will log into the system, I can just simply put it to the done. And what does it mean? So I have approved it, right? So it could be like instead of the sending to the customer, hey, please, could you please send me the approval within the Word document? So this could be enough, right? So he has seen it, approve it. So those are the techniques, like how to involve the customer into the game, into the project, and then with a set, with a limited rights. So don't be worried. And yeah, it really works. And then, of course, like there are certain options like how to visualize just his tasks. But for me, really popular is like a Kanban board, which is very visual. And usually the customer is not so much technical person. So the cards are purely fine. All right. So that's basically it from the, let's say, propositions, how the data could be visualized within the certain roles. And then we can probably jump into your questions.
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you, Peter, for the info and for the presentation, and the showcase which you showed us. It was really interesting. I really enjoyed it personally. So we have one question right now currently in the Q&A, and it's combined with the more than one question. So let me read it out for you. Can you please tell me more about the KPI calculation? What KPI are available in Easy Redmine? That is the second one. Then there is it possible to calculate plan fulfillment based on resource management? That's the third one. There is an example for that. For example, I have planned something in a resource management. For example, for some workers, I planned some allocations on particular tasks for next week, and I would like to compare it with a spend time. And there is another. Are there any page modules available for it? And the last one, or could I calculate it in a trend somehow? So can you see all these questions in the Q&A? I think you can, right, Peter?
To be honest, not really.
Already? Okay, so let's start with the first one. Can you please tell me more about the KPI calculations? What KPIs are available in Easy Redmine?
To be honest, we don't have any specific module for it. So it's purely due to the flexibility of the system, as far as you know, like with a certain custom fields and even the like a custom tables. So you can very easily define your own KPIs. So what we usually do within the implementation of the system, so questioning of the customer, like, hey, what are your KPIs or OKR, or what are your goals? And then we can do it within this combination. So there is not, unfortunately, there is not native module which would, for example, calculate something. But what you have seen so far, what I was demonstrating is like a combination of, for example, static KPI versus something which could be calculated automatically. Of course, this, let's say, automation calculation, it is something which could be pre-configured, but the own KPI, this is purely used by the custom field, right? So not a separated module.
All right, thank you. So there is another question from the same person, Lilia. Is it possible to calculate plan fulfillment based on resource management? And the example, for example, I have planned something in resource management. For example, for some workers, I planned some allocations on particular tasks for the next week, and I would like to compare it with with a spend time.
Mm-hmm. Of course. Let's say if you are planning the activities towards to the users, so those are based on the estimates, right? So you are putting in the let's say Gantt view, usually in the resource management, the task with a spend time, and then of course you can compare it with the estimated time, and that was usually, or I can even show you something. If you would like to easily compare it, so my recommendation would be not just through the Gantt view, but I would probably select the chart. So in my case, it would be, I'm just thinking what would be the best, for example, bar chart, right? So I can go for the tasks and then estimate versus spend. And yeah, I can even put there like certain limits, but let's imagine that I won't do that. And then let's do it per assignee, which would be like estimated time aggregated. So now I will create like so those are the users, right? And so this is like a planet work, as you said. So this is like coming from the estimate. And then if you would like to compare it, so in the very same chart, you can put there like a new data series, scroll down, again, put there the very same condition, like a tasks. And then now on the axis X would be assignee, but on the axis epsilon, there wouldn't be estimate, but the spend time, right? So sum of the spend time, clicking on the update. And now I'm getting into, for this normal user, he's called normal user. So from the estimate of 660, and there is a spend time of the 215. So of course, it's not visualizing, it's visualizing just like a two dimensions. But if you would like to go into the details, so again, the recommendation would to create, for example, pivot table on the bottom of this screen, and just we can go into the detail to see it. But of course, in the resource Gantt chart, there is no such certain options, but I would recommend to use the bar chart.
Okay, thank you. Well, there was an additional question. Are there any page models available for it? Or could I calculate it in the thread? In the trend somehow? That was
In the trends,
additional.
of course, you can do it, let's say, ideally like a one trend for the estimate, another one for the spend time, that would be purely visible next to each other. So the trends would be definitely appreciated. I have done it somewhere here, by the way. If I would jump in here and just to see, pardon, just a second, where it was. Here it was. So regarding to the budget, so here is like an estimate versus spend time, like a two trends. So of course, I said that probably it wouldn't be enough, but it really differs case by case. So this is just a very simple visualization, estimate, spend time next to each other. And yeah, if it wouldn't be enough, just call me on the, or ping me on the email, and then we can go into the detail.
Okay, Lilia is adding also some answer. No. Want to be sure that they worked on exactly task I have planned for them, not other tasks. This is a problem we have on, I'm sorry, practice, I guess. I planned for them to work on task X, but they work on task Y.
Mm-hmm. Good hint. Good hint. I'm just thinking about the certain limitations. Of course, yeah, there is a chance to create not just the private task, but the visibility of the task per certain conditions. So I would probably vote to do it per different visibility, but this is probably too strict, And just thinking if it wouldn't be enough to put there like a prioritization that like a methodologically said to the guys like, hey, please focus on the high priority task, which is task X, and the task Y is basically on the bottom of the queue. And just thinking if it would be enough, and if not, so then we can go to the more strict approach, which would be like to hide something unnecessary. But yeah, as said, I don't want to go so much into detail, but I see two options, like methodologically and then like strict hiding of the task within the task visibility.
Okay. There is one more question from Lilia regarding the risk dashboard. Is it still just a kind of visualization? Have you add some automation in the new versions? And she's also saying right here, for example, add some task template to a risk. And in case that risk will happen, we will be able to add the plan of the tasks to a project in one button. Or, for example, add a budget to risk. So that way we are able to calculate expenses related to risk if it happened, and we will be able to predict and calculate to the clean profit and profit in case the risk happen.
Great point. To be honest, it's not anyhow automated. It's more or less like a visualization of the let's consider it as an object which is similar to the task, right? But it is a risk itself, as you know. Of course, you have a chance to stick it or to connect it with a concrete task. So I can imagine in your case, like you will create a related task somehow to avoid it, like for example, where you will put their necessary actions. So that's the intention. So you will have, let's say, related tasks for example, avoiding of the risk, and then you are still monitoring the risk itself. But to be honest, it's not anyhow automated. So it's like a purely evidence where you can change the status within the life cycle.
All right, thank you. So Cecilia is asking, is there another way to track scope progress without using time estimation and time spent? Is it possible to use amount of completed task within an epic?
Excellent. I would definitely vote for that. Yeah. So certain techniques, right? So one of those could be like the collection of the task within the epic, right? So where you can I'm just trying to visualize that we can even snapshot it. Like, hey, this is like a fixed scope. We will put there somewhere the evidence. Like, hey, we have like 10 user stories which belongs to the epic, and we have agreed with a customer about these 10 user stories. You can put it somewhere in the description of the epic that we have agreed about these 10 user stories, and these user stories are linked to the epic, right? So this is definitely enough. This could be enough, like just to calculate it from the amount of the tasks there. Why not? I was more or less using the technique to visualize the estimate, because this could be also the interpretation of the scope. But yeah, you are definitely right. Yeah, that's great. Let's approach it in a manner like you have an epic and the certain user stories which belongs to the epic, and then you have just agreed that the 10 would be your scope, and whatever is, let's say, higher, this is out of the scope.
All right, thank you. Cecilia has also another question. Is it possible to restrict that the client can only execute the approval and not any task statuses change?
Definitely. There is a workflow mechanism. I can even show you. If in the admin section there is a workflow system, so per specific role. So let's imagine that your client has a specific role, and that's exactly what we were talking about. Like he will be like, for example, external role or customer role, and then you can set, all right, for the epic and the customer, we will define the specific transition. So for example, we will deselect these options for the customer, and he will be just just concentrating on the approval and nothing else, right? So in that case, he won't be able to do any other activities, right? Just only from to, from to, from to.
Okay. Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much. And there is one more question from Francisco. Is it possible to add expected dates with actual dates in tasks?
Within the custom field, yes. So I can imagine that could be an option, but there is not a native field for it. Of course, yeah, I remember the situations from the customers who were using it, not just only for the expected date of the delivery, but for example, like an original estimate versus let's say adjusted estimate, right? This is usual. This is usual. So you can of course use their custom field, which is format date and time or date, and then it would be your expected like a delivery date.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, that was our last question. We still have some few more minutes. If you have something which you would like to know, and you would like to ask Peter, you have the best chance right now to ask. So I'm gonna wait a little bit more. Meanwhile, I would like to remember you that every time when we are finishing these webinar, we are actually having the survey. So, talking about the survey, at the end, when I finish the webinar in the real estate, you are going to be presented via your Chrome or Internet Explorer, simply by your browser. You're going to be presented with this survey. So can you please fill out the survey and leave us some feedback to our webinars? We will highly appreciate to know your feedback, to know something what we can improve. For example, me, as a moderator or the presentation or whatever it is going to be. Yeah. So there is one more question from Mike. Hello, Mike. Is this webinar recording available? How to show labor utilization equals spent time, available time. So I'm going to answer the first question. Yes, this webinar is recorded. You are going to receive the recording. All the registered actually attendees are going to receive the recording in a few days into your mailbox. So where you can rewatch it in case you actually would like to see something or you lost some information. And the other question is for Peter, how to show labor utilization equal spend time / available time.
There is a certain report which is called like a resource report. So if you will click on it, so then of course you can visualize it on the, for example, weekly level. For me, it would be, let's say this month, for example, enough. I will just select the list view and then show maximal capacity per user, show user allocation. Those are the estimates, free capacity, that what you have asked for, and then the spend time, right? Of course, we can see something which is very close to the utilization, so we can even select this one. And if I will do that, so then you will see the certain employees and then the capacity, which is calculating from the, let's say, font of the hours of these persons. So this is like a week view. So usually it is like a 40 hours, of course. Per user, there is a chance to adjust it. So for example, Connie has a 100, which is purely exceeding the limit, but there is a capacity, there is allocation. Allocation means like estimated time for that person. Free capacity, which is logically that number minus this one, which is 38 hours, which you can still allocate to someone, and then the all spend time, right? I don't have so much data here, but you can imagine like if someone is reporting the time, so then it is showing also that he's reporting the time, and then allocation percentage, that's usually something which you can use for the utilization visibility, if that guy is overloaded or if he has enough time to be working on something else in a percentage view. So I would recommend to use this resource report table.
All right. Thank you. Thank you to you too, Mike, for your question. And that is technically our last question and last answer. I would like to, again, thank to you, Peter, for the amazing info which you shared today. The showcase which I really enjoyed. And all the interesting topic which you shared. And would you like to say some few more words at the end, or it is okay?
Yeah, not really. Hopefully, yeah, it brings you guys like another view than like because usually the problem is that our customers are trying to really overwhelm the home pages and the dashboards by the like multiple options of the data, but at the end, they figure it out like it's enough to visualize just like the certain dashboard per the KPI what they are monitoring. And that's the reason why we have asked for you, like during the questionnaire, like if you are purely concentrating on the scope, or is it more or less like a timeline or budget? Because some businesses, not the companies, but businesses are concentrated on certain KPIs and statistics. So please still keep it in mind once you will be visualizing the data, like what's your approach, what's your KPI, and then afterwards we can together or by yourself you can configure the certain dashboard.
All right. Thank you. Well, that's technically all from our side, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to add one small information. That is going to be all from our side, even from webinars. In year 2024, we are going to see each other in next year. So from myself as your main host, thank you so much that you were so amazing. You were here throughout the year in 2024. You can be really excited what we are going to plan for you in the year 2025. There are some interesting topics which we are preparing for you, so stay tuned. And that's technically all. Just remember the survey at the end. Do not leave after we finish the webinar. And with that, I would like to say thank you again for your time and have a beautiful rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.